but after this story happened to me, it's very hard not to. I lived at home with my parents and my older sister. She was a few years older than me and was going to be away at college. She was my only friend, and I actually cried when she left. But one thing I will say is, my sister has this weird obsession with dolls. Haunted dolls, to be exact. She would buy them off of eBay and other sites and collect them in her room. Walking in there sometimes reminded me of some kind of twisted haunted house. Well, my sister was away at college, and my parents were gone for the weekend, and I was stuck at home alone. I didn't have much of a social life outside of my immediate family, and for that weekend, my only plans were to relax and play some Minecraft. It was nighttime, and I was up in my room, scrolling on my phone. I was about to fall asleep when I heard movement from downstairs. I thought it could have been the house shifting, or just my imagination, and ignored it. I put my phone down and tried to go to sleep. Not even 5 minutes later, I heard movement again, but this time, louder. It seriously sounded like someone was walking around downstairs. Nervous, I got out of bed and made my way downstairs. I turned on all the lights and searched for whatever could have been making that noise. I searched the entire house and found nothing. I was so tired at that point that I didn't care anymore and just figured I was hearing things. I made my way back upstairs and to my bedroom. When I walked into my room, I shit you not, in the back corner by my window was one of my sister's dolls. It was slumped in the corner, facing the wall. I had a full-on panic attack. I hated my sister's dolls and never wanted them in my room. When I left my room, it was empty, and now suddenly, there was one of her dolls in it. My sister even kept her bedroom locked while she was away. I picked up the doll, found the spare key to her bedroom, and put it back on the shelf. I locked it again, and made sure it was really locked. Trust me, I got no sleep that night. The next day, I called my sister and told her when she comes back home from college, she needs to take all of her dolls away with her. I refused to be in the same house with them. When I explained to her what happened, she thought it was amazing rather than downright terrifying. Like I said before, I have never believed in the paranormal or dolls becoming possessed. But I was home alone that night, and I truly have no explanation of how her doll ended up in my room. I've gone down a rabbit hole and have found other people claiming similar activities with their dolls. I don't know what to believe at this point, but I never want to see one of those dolls again. This happened in the fall of 2022. For reference, I live with my parents, and their house is in more of a wooded area in Michigan. My parents had a retreat to go to for my dad's company, which meant that I was to stay home and watch my little sister Cora, who was 8 at the time. My parents had left Friday morning and wouldn't be back till Sunday evening. Cora and I did our normal stuff while they were gone. She was mainly in her room, and I was in mine, doing homework and scrolling on my phone. On Saturday night, I was in my room watching some YouTube videos. It was late, and I was getting sleepy. Cora comes into my bedroom, and she has this horrified look on her face. I asked her what's wrong, and she said there's a man outside her window who won't stop smiling at her. She was freaking out. I tried to calm her down, telling her that it was probably just a nightmare. But to really put her mind at rest, I told her I would go to her room just to make sure. We get to her room, and she pointed at the window where she said the smiling man was standing. I looked out and saw nothing but darkness and the trees. I looked under her bed and her closet just to show her that she had nothing to worry about. I was in the middle of explaining how it most likely was a nightmare when I suddenly got a text. I looked at it, expecting it to be my boyfriend, but saw it was from an unknown number. I opened the text and read it. It said, "Your sister isn't having a nightmare. Look out the window." Terrified, I went to the window again and looked out. It was so dark, and I couldn't see a thing, but the text message was enough to make my heart rate increase. Now I realized my sister was telling the truth, and there was somebody most likely out there stalking us. I closed the blinds and made sure the window was locked. I went around the whole house and made sure everything else was locked and that we were safe. I told Cora to stay in her room while I called my boyfriend. I told him to come over now because I think someone is watching us. My boyfriend was there in 20 minutes. He brought his dad's rifle and walked around our whole property and even part of the woods, but he found no one. When my parents got home Sunday evening, I told them everything that happened. My dad had cameras all around the house, and he pulled up the footage from that night on his computer. Horrifyingly, at 11:30 at night, the camera showed us some strange man coming out of the woods and walking up to Cora's bedroom. He stopped at the window and was looking in at her, just like Cora described. It was one of the most unsettling moments in my life, but I'm just glad he didn't break in and try to harm her. I could never live with myself if that would have happened. Nothing like this has happened since, and we have no idea who that man was or how he got my phone number.
This story is why I'm terrified to stay home alone. When I graduated college, I moved into my first apartment out in Philadelphia. It was one of my first big independent moves I ever made. It was in a good neighborhood where the crime rate was pretty low. And for context, I was a 22-year-old female at the time. I was in my apartment one night by myself, watching a horror movie. I was actually watching Midsommar, to be exact. When I was about halfway through the movie, I got a text message. I have an iPhone, and the message was from Maybe Jim. I didn't know any Jims, and I always hated when iPhones did that, so I opened the text and I read it. It said, "This is my favorite part." I didn't know what that meant, so I replied back, "Who is this? And what are you talking about?" They didn't reply for minutes. When they did, I opened the message and it said, "The movie you're watching, Midsommar. This is my favorite part." Freaked out by the fact that whoever this Maybe Jim person knew the exact movie I was watching, I got up and started looking out of my windows. It was past midnight at this point, and I couldn't see anyone standing outside or near my windows. I was about to sit back down on my couch when I heard a noise come from my bedroom. The door was shut, but I heard this loud movement, almost like someone was pushing aside my bed or dresser. Terrified that it could be an intruder, I went into my kitchen and grabbed one of the knives. I slowly walked to my bedroom door and opened it up. My room was empty. Everything had seemed normal, and I wasn't sure where that noise had come from. But then I saw my window. My window, which I had kept closed because it was freezing outside, was wide open. I definitely did not open it, which meant someone else must have. I quickly ran back into my living room, grabbing my phone and keys, and drove over to my boyfriend's place. I called him on the way, crying and explaining the weird text. I stayed at his place as he bravely went back to my apartment to make sure everything was okay. He called me and told me he couldn't find anyone. I refused to go back to my apartment for a week. We even tried to text and call that maybe gym number back, but all we got was an out-of-service tone. To this day, we have no idea who broke into my place and texted me. I'm absolutely terrified of being home alone and refuse to be. I either make sure I'm with my boyfriend, friends, or family at all times. I'm just glad I wasn't kidnapped, or even worse. Stay safe.